Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Mortal Content, my little foray into all things media. So tonight I'm really excited because we get to have our friend Amanda Deibert, and also long time no see, Casey Palmer back back in the mix after however long a hiatus from all of our streams. So welcome back. And Amanda.
Hi.
We're going to have you and Casey on here because you are both comic aficionados and you actually write comics.
I do.
I am woefully uneducated on comics. This is going to be really fun for me. So, let's delve in. Why don't we start with Amanda, what your background is for comics?
Sure. So my background is that for the last, I'm trying to think about it. Oh my gosh, this is making me feel old. Maybe 15 years now. I've been writing comics, which is, I feel very lucky about it. It's a really fun job to have. I'm also married to Kat Staggs, who's a comic book illustrator. So our home is very brought to you by comic books. And we love them, and they keep a roof over our heads. So very pro comics.
Yeah. So this is going to be a treat, folks. So strap in. It's going to be fun. Casey, why don't you tell us a little bit about your comics journey, I guess?
Of course, yeah. No, I mean, I was that kid who was hanging out in the comic book shops as a teenager. And to the point where I would help people who worked at the shop close up, and they'd give me rides home because I just stay there all the freaking time. And I had to part ways with several of my longstanding books when I got married and had kids and had to redo the household. But I managed to stash some away in a hidden bookcase that I look forward to sharing with my kids when they're a little older and can understand the nuance of more complex titles. But I've been a longtime fan of 30 plus years now. So yeah.
Okay, Casey, I wanted to say I relate to that. When I was in high school, my best friend's stepfather owned our local comic book store, so we got to hang out after, it would close, but we would still be in there, hanging out and reading. So I very much relate to the late nights in the comic book shop.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So like I said, I am very woefully dumb about comics. So it just wasn't something I was into when I was younger. And I feel like a lot of times comics are like something you generate a love for when you're younger, and that kind of carries on for most folks. And so, what was, I'm going to step back here. One thing I usually do is I talk about what we're drinking, and I just completely befuddled it because I was having so many technical issues before the show because I was trying to broadcast from my studio that I've been working on for a year and a half, and all of it got glitchy. So, Amanda, I saw you sipping on something. What is in your cup there?
So I took my daughter to go get a boba before, after her music lessons. She takes guitar and piano, and so I'm having a coffee boba with a banana foam on top, and it's delicious.
Ooh. The banana foam sounds yummy.
It is.
So, how about you, Casey? You drinking anything, or
I can fix that problem. It's been so long that I forgot to bring a beverage in with me. I was having some white and then red wine on the porch with my sister-in-law and husband who are visiting, as well as my kid's godmother. We were all kind of hanging out there telling stories while the kids are entertained by TV downstairs. For all y'all watching, there are 6 children in my house right now. 2 of them are mine. But yes, I can go procure a drink. If you allow me just a moment, I'll go to the fridge, which is literally 5 steps away. Thank you.
Yeah. So for Mortal Content, this is the show where I drink whiskey because I love Scotch, as my moniker is Scotch Figures. So I'm drinking some Lafroig, which is one of my favorite Islay whiskey scotches. So that one smoky and peaty and yummy. So cheers to that one, and then we'll see what
cheers. Sounds great.
Yeah, I've never. I think I've had one boba tea in my life, and I don't think it was that cool to have coffee and banana.
You should have got boba with me when you were in Toronto, my friend. We have many shops. So many shops. It's so good.
You took us to a really excellent vegan place that I did. It was an awesome restaurant. So yeah.
Anyway, come back sometime. I'll show you some more. I brought a Olay passion fruit tequila and passion fruit cocktail in a can.
Yum.
And this is one of the alcoholic ones, so I'm gonna make it work. We have some non-alcoholic ones as well. I just kind of grabbed and went for it. So
Yeah.
cheers.
Cheers to that. So glad, again, glad you're on here and drinking what you like. That's something that, Greg and all of our streams, we always say, if you're going to have something to drink whatever you like. It doesn't matter. So let's go back to the comic book conversation. I want to start with Amanda. What was your intro? What got you into comics? What was the thing you were like, all right, I'm in?
My gateway, which I think has been generationally for many kids, was Archie comics. So when I was a very little girl, going to the grocery store, they always had the stand by the checkout. If I behaved, my mom would buy me a new like Archie or Betty and Veronica digest as like a treat for rocking with her at the grocery store. So that way I got a new one of those like every week, every time we went grocery shopping. So that was definitely my like gateway in. And for a long time, when people would ask, like, what comic property have you not gotten to write that you wanted to, I would always say Archie because that was like nostalgically my first. But then in this past year, I finally got to write for Archie as Mr. Justice. And I pitched like a Veronica idea because she was my favorite always. And I got to write that. So I feel bucket list achieved. Very excited.
That's pretty fantastic. Like to get in to do something that's like your, like one of your foundational things is pretty awesome. So,
yeah, I cried a little bit.
I would hope I would. So Casey, what was your little launching point into the comic world?
I think, like many young boys who are exploring comics, you kind of start with the same basics when it's like the Batmans, the Supermans, all that kind of stuff. And, it was, I almost look at like, I find in most subcultures that I've dabbled in, you kind of start the same place as everyone else where you're just like, this is what it is. And then you dive deeper and deeper and understand more of what things have to offer. So it was definitely, these, whether it was at the shop or whether it was books from the library or whatever, just kind of checking out the stories that were really popular in the early 90s. This was like the muscle-bound Rob Liefeld era where everything was all about like bright, shiny colors, not so heavy on story. But it's what we had at the time. And eventually, as I got older and life grew more complex, I found stories that aligned better with that. So.
Nice. So there's like a lot of things like, man, when I think of comic books, I think a lot of what Casey is talking about, but the comic books is like way bigger a genre than I realized. And I realized that one time I went to New York Comic Con with a friend of mine, and I just didn't realize just the wide swath of comics that there are. Just like I was really kind of thrown a bit because I had a very narrow perception, and going to something like that is really great for you to kind of open up, what you can see. So yeah, I did get some comics. I actually got a few from my kids, but my kids were more like, and my sons were more into like the almost like horror comics, but not like super scary horror comics, but like so they were into those kind of things. So that was interesting. So Amanda, you are obviously a comic book writer. So why don't we talk a bit about what you're got coming up for all of us, since you didn't talk about Archie here. So I'm going to bring your little website up here with all these fantastic things. So
yeah, there's some of the recent and upcoming. I was quickly trying to update. I'm sure I've left some stuff out. But yeah, later this month, I have volume 2. Speaking of horror comics, because you mentioned it, my wife and I collaborate on several things for Storm King Comics, but one of them is an ongoing series that we have with their Dark and Twisted line, which is Death Mask. So Death Mask Volume 1 has been out for a couple years, but Volume 2 is coming out at the end of this month, like 2 days before Comic-Con. So that I'm really excited about. It's very, very dark, very not for kids. Lots of creative kills. It's pretty gory mystery. If you like, this one's kind of a detective serial killer vibe. So if you like really twisted, interesting serial killer mystery things, then I'd say get Volume 1 and then get Volume 2, and it comes out in a little while because that's a fun one. On the opposite side, Teen Titans Go, my newest one, just came out last week, and that one is it was actually, it's more timely than I anticipated it was going to be when I pitched it a while back, like maybe a year ago. But it is kind of summer themed, but it talks about America and Starfire dealing with her experience as an immigrant. And it's pretty fun and it's funny and it's your normal Teen Titans Go silly antics, but I think that it's got a pretty poignant, important, topical message that I didn't realize was going to be as topical when I wrote it, but here we are. So glad I wrote it. And those are the two that are out this month. So my two most recent.
Yeah, and as you see, you got some other things with Powerpuff Girls, but that I believe you've been doing that for quite some time.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, the other one I didn't know about Rocket and Groot. I'd never actually heard of that one. So what is? I mean, obviously it's Rocket and Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, but
yes. So these are really fun. I have two of them that I did for Scholastic. Which the exciting thing for the kid in me, since we were talking about the kids, is like these were sold at the Scholastic book fairs, which that like so exciting because I also, I'm a PTA mom. My daughter's in elementary school. I also run the book fairs, and so it was like this fun thing where I got to like unbox the book fair, and then there's my Rocket and Groot comics, which was so fun. But yeah, they're like silly, fun kid comics. It's Rocket and Groot going on adventures. The first one is The Hunt for Star-Lord, and then this one is Tales of Terror, which is a very light, spooky, but not scary. Like your, 6-year-old and 8-year-old can handle it levels of spooky. So it's fun.
But it's like side question for you though. So
sure.
With Teen Titans Go, Powerpuff Girls especially, they are very underrated properties when it comes down to like the wink wink nudge nudge adult things that you can kind of slide in there. Like I was watching a clip literally earlier today when it came down to a villain who wanted to get Susan B. Anthony coins in Powerpuff Girls. And then they basically, were able to talk about women's rights and equalities as they schooled the villain into like what needed to happen there. And Teen Titans Go obviously has a lot of mature themes that come into it. So wondering, when you are writing, do you get to weave some of that into the narratives?
Absolutely. Awesome. I think probably Teen Titans Go is one of my favorite things to write for a couple reasons. One, like, yes, you can go on like a side tangent about just about anything, and that's okay because that's definitely in keeping with the vibe. And you can also be as weird, like anything that is zany and funny and bizarre, like you cannot get too weird. And so it creates this really fun thing where you can be as zany and as heady as you want to be, as long as you keep it in that wheelhouse of like it being light and funny and age appropriate for kids. But it is actually really fun because I just let my imagination like go bonkers, and it's fine. And yeah, so I love it for exactly that reason. And same with Powerpuff Girls. Yeah, they are very fun to write.
That's awesome. That's my sidebar done. Doug, thank you very much for entertaining that.
No, this is stuff I never watched Powerpuff Girls or Teen Titans Go or any of that. Like my kids are a little older, so like my kids are SpongeBob and those kind of. Which SpongeBob has a lot of adult humor in it too, in its own way. And also, what's the one with Phineas and Ferb?
Yep.
That has so much adult humor in it. It is great for that purpose. So yeah.
I actually just wrote a SpongeBob picture book that will be out later this year. It's called Love from SpongeBob. Yeah. And it's like a little gift book. I did a Garfield one and a SpongeBob one.
Very nice.
They're fun.
Nice.
They're fun. So throw a plug in there.
I think like you get some getting
like
these nice little fun projects, right? But that's giving you fun projects. So like that's kind of cool that you can do something. Like to me, that would be like if I was doing something like that and I got to do something with SpongeBob, that would be about as giddy as I could get because I still like watching SpongeBob episodes and I'm 53. So yeah, there's that whole goofiness. But so You've also done some other things that are just comic book related. You've done a few shows, I believe. One was
Mm-hmm.
a He-Man adaptation, which
Mm-hmm.
came out. It was a little confusing because it came out at the same time as Kevin Smith's.
Yes. It was that funny thing where you're like, what do you write for? And I'm like, oh, He-Man on Netflix. And they're like, oh, the Kevin Smith one. I'm like, no, the other He-Man that's also on Netflix at the same time. Like, same streamer, same property. Like, but ours was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Mhm.
Uh but yeah, so we did ours was the more like aimed at kids now, whereas Kevin
Mhm.
Smith's was more aimed at, I'd say, like more people like our age, kind of. His was like nostalgia focused, and ours was a reboot for the kids nowadays, and that's
Yeah.
the big difference.
Kids these days.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sorry, that was very boomer of me to say it that way too. But yeah. So, what else? Is there anything else you have going on, like show wise, from that sort of thing? Or you have anything else coming out in that sort of realm? I know
Um,
it's strange. I know it's strange from comics a little bit, but you
no,
do a
that
lot of things, so I'm just trying to keep up.
I'm happy to talk about anything. Nothing TV right now, but I have for the last year. I've been working on a video game, which was like the first time that I've ever written for video games. So that's been kind of fun. It's an app-based game. It's DC Dark Legion.
Oh, I saw the ads
And
for that. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's Christos Gage, who is also a big comic book writer and television writer, much bigger and better than I am, and a huge video gamer. Like any game that people have really, really geeked out about and thought was amazing, like Spider-Man, Christos wrote. And he's amazing. And I was lucky enough that he brought me onto this video game with him to help out. And it's been a lot of fun. I have discovered that writing video games is a super fun thing to do, and I hope I get to do more of it.
But it's
So,
such a different discipline. Oh my gosh, Amanda. So I've started working on kind of like my own indie title bit by bit on the side, just to like as a
oh,
project.
cool.
And the writing side of it, oh my gosh. Like the big thing for me is like I've always had a comic book in my head for a long time. I used to draw gag strips in the early 2000s and then kind of,
Hmm.
when an adulted the way I thought adulting was supposed to happen before I realized that there's very many variations on adulting. But then I started thinking about it more in video game terms lately. And the entire idea of being able to have, varying branches of narratives, or you have, people who have multiple versions of dialogue depending on how you interact with them and things like that. Like I'm playing Hades right now, and just the amount of lore and interactivity and everything you can unlock just by playing characters over and over and getting to befriend people. I'm just like, so it's a very, very impressive discipline to like get yourself into.
It's massive, right? Like the amount of writing is so much more than it would be for a script for
Hmm.
TV or film or comic books, because of exactly what you're saying. Like there's the part that the player's playing, which obviously you're not writing because that's going to be, whatever they do action wise. But right, it's like if there's three options of things they can do, for example, then you've got to write
Yep.
dialogue for whatever those outlines are. So it's like you're breaking it away. It's like a choose your own adventure, but with like infinite
Mm.
adventures. And then you've got little things that like maybe this like random person, somebody can walk up and say something. So you've got to have some
Yep.
lines. And then like with DC Dark Legion, for like you can choose which characters you're like equipping your fight team with, but that
Hmm.
means that there have to be these little like one liners with like
Yep.
five different scenarios of like, here's a one
Yep.
liner for this, for literally like every
Yep.
tiny minuscule DC character that has ever been invented, and you've got to make it fit in their voice with their backstory. So it's like spreadsheets with literally like thousands of
It
lines of
it's
dialogue.
the LSAT logic problem on acid. Basically, you're like, okay, you think a tree like a chart this big is crazy. Like, just take it to like multiple dimensions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so impressive when you can get it to work.
It's banana. I mean, it is the sheer volume. Like for something like you'll have like the littlest thing, or they'll be like, we're gonna do a Mother's Day event. So we want these little lines that have to do with Mother's Day. And like, everybody's got their own tragic backstories with their mothers, mostly are dead. And so it's like, okay, now we've got to give everybody like these little like 3 or 4 line scenes of dialogue with all these different people. Yeah, it is it's infinite writing. But that is actually what I find really fun about it. Is that it just kind of goes on forever, and you get to go like, okay, well, this is what they would say in this one. And then instead of making a choice like you have to in writing, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, in this one they win, or in this one they're interrogating something, or in this one they've just kicked this person's ass and it's all fine.
Yeah, Daniel was marking about the Charlie Day
Exactly what I
whiteboard,
had in
like
mind. The "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" meme. I'm like, that's exactly what we're talking
where it's like
about.
do and the red yarn going everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think of that like in video games, but when you're describing it, it makes so much sense. Like just the idea of like interaction could be so different. And the thing for me though is I play a lot of first person shooter games when I play. I don't play a lot of open world stuff because that gives me like decision paralysis, and I can't. My brain is not happy doing all those things. There's too many things to do. So, but I could see that where you're like having to put dialogue with different outcomes and different interactions. That has to be like now I get it. Now I get what you guys are talking about, how it's like just kind of all mapping all over
Someone
the place.
needs to write it all. Someone needs to
Yep.
make all that happen so that it can happen, right? And yeah, it's hilarious to me because, you know, as Amanda describes this, even if you're talking about like, let's say you have one character and that one character has one line of dialogue for each of 10 levels. But as soon as you have two other people, let's say they have to have dialogue that interacts with each of those two people. So now, what did I do? I just did a
Ooh,
gesture.
it was
Okay,
very
I'm gonna put my
That's true.
hands
very
down. Oh
festive.
my gosh, I don't know what I did. But yeah, so you're at like 30 lines, but then you know you have to take the entire mathematical permutations of like, okay, if you need one person to have dialogue with each of these other people, and then you multiply it by however many combinations there are, it gets to be a lot. And you have to have there's actual software and systems out there to keep track of all this stuff that can show you where the gaps are, because it just gets to be a lot to manage if you don't have something that's built for it.
I feel very seen right now. Like you've understood how I spent the last few months doing like, oh, I wrote 1,500 individual lines and they are all just
Mhm.
Oh my
one-liners.
God.
And that was today.
Oh, that's why I am nothing short of impressed right now. And anyone who does this, especially at scale for a large game where you have that many PvP interactions between characters, it's a whole discipline. So well done.
Thank you. I feel very seen. I feel very seen right now.
It reminds me a bit of like doing coding. Like I had to do coding early on in my IT career, and I was just like, and you make one little mistake, and like then you have to comb through it all to figure it out. Like it's not quite that, but I feel like it is because you want to make the dialogues authentic and the phrasing's right and inflection and all that jazz. So when you write that stuff, do you actually get to converse with the people voicing it to kind of make sure they're getting the gist, or they're saying do this, or
no, they have their own, like there's a director for that and for the voice actors. But I did actually, before they cast the voice actors, I also had to write sides for all the characters. Like, and it was before we had written like the whole game. So I had to just make up like a few, like here's what this character would say if they were triumphant, and here's a scene where they're kind of mad or sad or whatever. And so like I had to do that for a ton of the characters so that they could cast. And I did get to hear some of the auditions, which was neat. I mean, like my opinion was not the important opinion, but they did let me like listen and have an opinion, which I thought was kind of nice. It was fun.
That's cool. That's really cool though. Like again, it's something like as someone who like I write, but I'm not like a published author. So I just think of writing in one sort of this direction. And the problem is writing TV writing comic books, writing everything's just a different function. And then the thing for me is like if I do something like I like doing like flash fiction or microfiction challenges because it's like you have to be super concise and it's got to be fast. And I like those because it exercises a different part of my brain for writing. So I feel like maybe is that kind of how you feel about it when you're doing like all these different disciplines of writing,
Yeah, I actually like, because people will say that a lot about, because I'm, I write in different mediums and then also different genres that are very, like I'm doing kid stuff and then I'm doing like this really adult stuff. But it is that I think keeps me from getting stale. It's like I get to use a different part of my brain, a different side of my creativity. It gives me, a new, different kind of challenge. And, you're saying you like really concise, which would probably make you well suited for writing comics, because the interesting thing about comic writing is you're writing to like the big beats, the moment, and every panel, you've got the image that is really like telling you this part of the story, and you have to have very concise dialogue. And so it is really getting a story down to brass tacks while giving it as much visual and emotional impact as you can. So I think maybe that would appeal to you.
Yeah, I just have no inroad for those things. So, there's that's a little problem. But
yeah, there's that. That's true of everything. My God.
So did you have to research the DC characters, or were you really familiar with them all? Or did you have to go in and do a deep
No,
dive?
I mean, of course, we're talking about the entire history.
I was
That's a lot of
assuming
people.
I
That's a
could
lot of
lie to you and
characters.
be like, yeah, I have an encyclopedic knowledge of every character, because also there's different like even a character like you take Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, like the
Bronze Age,
bigs that
Silver
everybody
Age,
knows.
Modern Age.
Exactly. And there are
Mhm.
different things where they have changed their origin story, their back. So you also have to know like which version are we
DC
going,
52, like it goes all over the
like,
place.
because they'll be like, well, what's her backstory? And I'm like, well, which one? So it's, I mean, these were the premise of the game was kind of based on a specific comic arc, but then it goes on even beyond that. So, and then when you're getting into all these things, yeah, there were characters that I barely knew. There were a few that I had not heard of at all, like some real obscure ones. And I was like, okay, I've got to stop and research before I even know what a line of dialogue, how they would authentically talk about this, because I don't know anything. Which was that was kind of fun and cool too, because you're getting to go deep into the lore, which it's nerdy and it's time consuming, but it's kind of fun.
Well, are you one of those people that like enjoys the research?
I do, actually. It's also, this is where it's helpful, because I'm also a comic book writer. So getting deeper into the background and lore of these things will pay off not just for this job, but it also makes my other work a little bit like easier for me to do, because maybe someday I can bring in one of these obscure characters that I didn't know very well into a story that I'm writing now, or it just gives me more stuff to play with.
Yeah. I like that idea of just being able to, oh, well, now I can utilize it. The reason I asked the research question is more like, so my wife loves research, like and it's part of her neurodivergence. So I find it interesting. Like we had on our beer show, we had Mallory O'Meara on. I don't know if you know who she is, but she did a book where it was called Girly Drinks, and it was about the role of women in alcohol and all this stuff. And
cool.
she read 700 books for research for that book.
Wow.
And I'm just like, okay. The DC Encyclopedia. Oh, no.
I was like, so Amanda, tell me about King Solovar.
Exactly. Pop quiz.
But honestly, no, it's like there's so many like this thing is massive, and I've been reading DC comics for ages, and the number of people in here are just kind of like, who are these people that I've never heard of? Like, and some of them I would be so curious to like know how you handle ones that are maybe not appropriate for modern era anymore.
Yeah, there were a few that I was like, oh, this exists, huh? Okay.
Someone thought this was a good idea. Okay.
That was an idea that somebody had, and they wrote it down.
And
seriously.
Published it, got it out into the public eye.
Into the world.
Amazing. My mind is blown with just knowing just the math on this alone. I'm like, no, that's so much.
Well, so does the DC universe have more characters to worry about than Marvel, or is it pretty similar? Out of curiosity, because I don't know.
I don't know by the numbers, but my guess is that they're pretty similar. They've both been around for a really long time. They both have a lot of like random obscure characters. Like if I was going to do a Marvel game, I'm sure I would spend just as much time going, who is this? What do they do? And same thing with, there being different iterations and,
True.
Well, if you believe the internet, which we all know we should do, with no critical thinking or prejudice whatsoever.
No
Yeah,
reservation.
love this. What could go wrong? Keep going.
We're talking about apparently it's 10,000 in DC to 50,000 Marvel, but I think it goes back though, Amanda, to the fact that you talked about iterations and everything. It all depends on how you classify a different character.
Mhm.
Like, are the different dimensional variants of a character different characters, or are they just like iterations of the same person? There's like so many ways to look at it. And this
Well,
is
that's a
going,
good point because
yeah.
like you could just go into the Spider-Verse alone.
Well,
and
that's
then-
it. Exactly.
like, there's a
right.
billion
But
characters.
this goes back to our original point. We're talking about being in the comic shop. A lot of the debates would be on like, how do you classify things? Who would win in this fight? And how does this work out? Like, it gets the rabbit hole is so deep. It's so deep that you can like take almost any simplistic thing and turn it into a 5-hour conversation without a problem. That is the essence of the comic book fan right there. This is what you hear on the floor at any Comic-Con will be everyone going into their own fandom debates all the time because it's just the way that it all works.
Yeah, listen. I know Human isn't the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four. Am I wrong?
You are correct, but the OG one, like, let's just say they had an idea of how it would work, and then it went another way when they popularized it. That's what happened with a lot of characters. This is my eldest. He is here, and he has no shame and shows up when I'm on calls because he loves to do it. And then my youngest is also just peeking in to see what's happening. Everyone's interested in what Daddy does. So,
sure, of course.
Welcome back to my world. Welcome back to my world.
I love it. I get it. I get it.
All right. So what were they going to do? What's the Human Torch thing? Is it something that was probably shouldn't have been done, or like the OG Human Torch thing?
I can't even remember. I'm trying to think of like the original story for the Human Torch because eventually it did become Johnny Storm, but I'm trying to remember if it started that way or if it went another way to start with and then went down that way. It's been a while.
I also am not sure.
Okay.
I can grab my Marvel encyclopedia if you want. I know.
I mean, please do. Just in general, have both encyclopedias going so we can.
I mean, we need to be fair. We need to be fair.
Yeah. Fair and balanced.
Yeah.
You know.
So Daniel said that
came. Both alike in dignity. You know, we gotta.
Yes. Apparently, this was a pre-Fantastic Four comic from the Human Torch. So, all right. Well, all right. Although apparently people like seeing the kids pop on, so that's always nice. But
yeah. I mean, of course, they're adorable. What's not to love?
Yeah, my kids are not small. My youngest is 18, so and my oldest is 20. Will be 25 this year. So it's like they're all adults.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that makes it like they're no longer cute, but it's kind of awesome to watch them be adults. So that's kind of fun. So
I'm kind of looking forward to that. Yeah, every stage is cool.
No luck finding the encyclopedia, Casey?
Don't even ask. Here.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot going on. No, I did not find it. So let's keep it rolling.
All right. Sounds good. So, I mean, there's a million places we can go with this. So what do each of you think, and let's start with Casey, what do you think is the best movie or TV show adaptation of a comic? Could be any, whatever floats your boat.
Oh, that's so biased. Oh my gosh. That's like, you can't even ask that question properly. I would say.
I know it's a little like asking what your favorite kid is and right. What's your 100%. Favorite movie. There's too many things that go, but I'm just curious what you think was really well done.
You know what? There's two that I'm going to bring up and they're very different from each other. One of them is the Dick Tracy movie. And I thought that was just so well done when it came down to the campiness and the kind of characters, because they really went on for like the movie makeup and everything. I just thought it was ridiculously good. And, I know there's better comic book movies that have been put out. You have the Dark Knight, which is obviously on top of many people's lists when it comes down to the storytelling and everything. But Dick Tracy just kind of holds a special place in my heart when it comes down to how it was executed. But for TV shows, and this is probably because I'm just a huge fan of the series, Invincible was one that just really hits home for me. And I remember because when it first came out, that's when I was still hanging out in comic shops. And I just saw this like, oh, what is this thing? And I started reading it and learning about it. And As I see people starting to really dive into Invincible now, all these years later, it's really I just I had the entire like I was there before it was cool, but it's something that I really love to soak in as much as possible. And there's a ton of other things that I love for different reasons, but those are the two that immediately come to mind for me.
Okay, Amanda, what about you? Where's your heart at on those?
There's so many things that I love for so many different reasons, but if you want just like my all-time favorite thing that is actually comic book based, I'm gonna give the most lesbian answer on earth and say Agatha All Along is such a good show. Like, oh my god. So I'm gonna go with that because that's where my heart is currently.
And that was sort of spun off of the Vision
Of WandaVision. Yeah.
WandaVision.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it all connects, which connects straight from the movies. I mean, like it all the Marvel Cinematic Universe is complicated because you have to see so many things to really appreciate. Because, like, yes, you could watch it standalone, but it's much better if you've watched WandaVision, and WandaVision is much better if you understand what happened to her right before it starts. So it, like watch a whole bunch and then you really appreciate how good they are.
I just love that you were like, I'm going to give the most lesbian answer ever. Like,
I mean,
it's a good answer.
It's
such
allowed.
A good show. It's all good. It was a great answer.
For sure. No, it's super, super good. And I didn't get a chance to watch it. Again, my tastes are just, they go all over the place. And I tend to go for darker stuff. So
what's your answer?
Well, again, understanding that I don't have a lot of understanding of comics. I will tell you things that I watched that I really enjoyed that I don't know if they were true to the comics. I thought I really, really liked the first season of Luke Cage. I thought the second season was a bit of a mess. The second season was a bit of a mess. Jessica Jones, I really liked because David Tennant as a villain in that was one of the best villains I've ever seen in a show. He was just ruthless and vicious. So, and I think also the Dark Knight trilogy, like the whole entire trilogy is quite good. Like the Dark Knight's excellent. Batman Begins, I thought was really super good too. And that gets kind of shoved under the table a little bit. I wasn't so much a fan of the last Batman one in that saga with Bane. I mean, I thought that was a little ham-fisted, but again, they could have been very good, like very true to the comics. But I don't know.
It wasn't. But I would love to get your take. Well, one book on that topic that you should read, Doug, is Batman Nightfall, which is kind of like the entire introduction to Bane, Volume 1. And essentially, the setup is Bane in the movie is very much kind of like a golem character. He's not somebody who really expresses a lot of individual intelligence. He's being manipulated from behind the scenes. In the comic, oh my gosh, this man is a super villain genius who manipulates the heck out of Batman. It is such a good read. It's like, and I was thinking earlier, if we got into a topic of favorite comics and top 10s and stuff like that, my problem with it is that I like parts of stories. Like there'd be like, especially for something long running like a Batman or Superman, Spider-Man, etc. They have sections that are really, really well done. And it's, going back to Amanda, it's because of a good writer and you layer a good artist on top of that. There's moments where you have like, oh, that run was really, really good, but it's really hard to come up with an end-to-end in the world of comics that is like, okay, you can say it's amazing the whole way because they run for so long that things change. Yes. So Batman Nightfall, Volume 1, excellent read.
So we have some other comments here. So some about Vision Quest. That's an 80s movie to me.
It's going to be another part of that. It's the continuation of the WandaVision Agatha. Like it's all interconnected.
So what level of the Marvel universe, like there's like, are they doing like volumes? Like, I forget. It's like they're like in the 5th iteration.
Phases.
Like,
It's phases. Yeah. Are we
Yeah,
still in
so
phase 5? Or are we going to phase 6? I can't even keep track anymore. I have so much going on in life that I'm like, what are we doing
Yeah.
here?
No, I just sit back and enjoy it as it comes to me. I say, this is great. Let's do more.
yeah.
And everybody dies, and you're all right. Well, everyone's dead now.
Yeah, this is I don't know if either of you saw the Batman, which was with Robert Pattinson as Batman.
Hmm.
Did you? I thought that was pretty good, and Amani and Greg both, or this one was both were very much on par for that. But yeah, they talking about cinematography. Actually, some scenes were a little long, but yeah. So, all right. So the man who knows everything, Daniel piped in. Phase 6 starts with Fantastic Four, and 5 ended with Ironheart. I have yet to watch Ironheart. I've heard good things though.
Phase 5 was confusing. It had moments. It definitely, like, Agatha was a gem. There's a couple of them where I'm just like, okay, we're doing this right. But there are a lot of steps where we're just kind of like, what's happening here? Yeah, there's a lot of people who are just going to tell you all about phase 1 to 4 is their Marvel. This is what they stand. And I think a lot of it comes to the fact that we get older.
I was gonna say it's
We
about
get
the age
older.
something hits you. That's your thing. It's just like in music when you go like, oh well, 90s music
100%.
was peak music, and it's like, no, you're just old.
Hey,
Mhm.
I say 80s music is peak music, so now
But
you're
that's the
making me
thing.
feel
It's
even
like
older.
the
Thanks.
music that hits when you're coming of age and it really means something to you becomes
Builds
your
your
favorite.
identity.
Yep. Same with comics. Same with movies.
Books.
It's all fine. Books, all of it. It's the age it hits you, right?
100%.
Like
100%.
there's like I imagine like there's books that I didn't read when I was a kid, and they're like everybody's like, well, it's sort of a seminal read. You really need to read that. And then I read that as an adult, and I'm like, why did I need to read that? Like, but I understand that like
Right. But like you were supposed to be
it's different.
12.
Yeah, if I was 12, that might have been pretty like, wow, what was that? So
Yeah.
But I mean, on that topic, rewatches of things that came out years ago that we loved, some of them holds up and some of them doesn't. But when you see something that has additional layers of context you failed to appreciate on an earlier watch, earlier
Hmm.
read, oh,
Hmm.
that is magical. I love it when I see something like, oh, how did I not see this 10, 20, 30
Hmm.
years ago, right?
Or the rewatch with like the parent perspective, where like as a kid you were
Hmm.
just looking at it through the eyes of the kid, and now you look back and you're like, oh man,
Yeah, The
now
Lion
I'm
King
really
makes me
relating
cry
to.
now. I'm like, when Mufasa dies and everything, I'm just kind of like, oh, Simba, I'm so sad for this guy. Like, it's like, I watched this when I was what, 11 when it came out. I'm like, this is great. I love Be Prepared. I love this movie. And now I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I can keep going.
Right? You're like, he doesn't get to watch his son grow up. Oh God. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, it's funny when you watch ones or you see things like whatever media you're consuming, and like when you're a kid, you're like, man, that parent was an asshole, and then you're like, when you get to be a parent, you're like, oh, I get it now. Like,
That's
Right. You're like,
justified.
that parent
like
was right, and as a
I
matter of
totally
fact, you should be in more trouble.
it is funny to see that perspective shift, but yeah. What other comic like what things do you guys want to talk about? Comics, current, old, like I've asked bunches of questions and I can ask more for sure. I have some more, but I'm curious what you guys want to talk about as far as comics, like what's going on now. Like I know, Amanda, you're writing them, but what ones aren't you writing that you're like really interested in or think are really good?
I mean, there's always so much, which is again what I love about it is it's one of those things that when people are talking about like how do I get into comics or like how do I get started, because inevitably that'll come up in a conversation with somebody who's maybe only like they read it when they were kids or not at all. And then I'm always like, well, first you have to tell me like what you like to watch and what you like to read because like whatever you're into, there are comics for that. Like literally no matter what your favorite like genre of TV show is, there is absolutely a comic book series, probably more than one, that will appeal to, even if you like documentaries. Like there's really good, people do tell their life story, and they're beautiful and powerful, and so like I feel like I love superhero comics. I write superhero comics. I enjoy them. I enjoy the films. I enjoy all of it. But I think that a lot of people think about it as that's what comics are. And that's actually like such a actually small slice of what they are, which is like one thing that in getting to write horror comics for the last few years, I've really like started to have a lot of fun with. There's a lot of good horror out there in like the comic world, and it's kind of fun.
I always think like when I think of horror in that realm, I think more graphic novels versus comic books, you know? So, and those are two different things. So,
Yes and no. I mean, it depends on the graphic novel because some of them are just collections of different issues of comics, and some of them are supposed to be standalone stories, depending on what it is. And I think as I get older, a lot of it goes back to the entire idea of like how much does the artist and writer have capacity to put out? Because depending on if you're working for a big publisher with stringent deadlines, if you're doing an indie type thing, sometimes you have a full story you want to tell in like little chunks. The comic I was thinking of just a moment ago was the Scott Pilgrim series, because being from Toronto, Scott Pilgrim is very much part of our lore, and that came out as 6 books, right? Where each told a story in about, let's say, 200 odd pages. So the number of formats and approaches to telling stories is just so wildly diverse when it comes down to comics. As you're saying, Amanda, and I know you well know this, that superheroes are like the tippiest tip of the iceberg. There's so much available out there. There's so many different you can go as deep as you want in comics, you can stay at the surface. Like, it is wild just how many ways people have found to articulate themselves in the comic formats.
Well, and you look at, because I have a daughter in elementary school, and I'm really good friends with the school librarian, and the comic books and graphic novels are the most checked out things that the kids are reading. And what the kids are reading is almost none of it is superhero stuff. It's a lot of stuff, and a lot of extremely popular stuff, but like, like Raina Telgemeier does these very like slice of life books that are about like when she was a kid, and they are very much like books that are relating with stuff that the kids are dealing with, and it's very much like kid drama, but it's a comic, and they love it, they eat it up. And my daughter right now is reading like she just got from the library this series of graphic novels that are about Greek gods, but they're at a high school or something, and it's really funny because she's
that Percy Jackson.
It's not Percy Jackson. She's read Percy Jackson too, but these are like, it's a different thing. And my daughter is such a Greek mythology nerd that she's going like, Mom, some of this is just not accurate, and I'm just going to have to let it go and enjoy the story. She's like, because it just doesn't make sense, because like Zeus is Athena's dad, but in this he's like the principal of the school, and like she unsurprisingly, to women that work in comics are raising a big nerd. So, and I say that in the most loving, I love it so much, but yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. My oldest would be like one of those nitpicky, like if there was a book that they liked and the movie wasn't exactly like the book, they were furious, like that it wasn't, that's not how it was in the book. I'm like, yeah, but they can't always do the stuff in the books that they do in screen. It's not possible,
right?
But he would just be furious. It would be really funny to me. But
well, and I've had to explain that to my director. I'm like, some of the stuff in Greek mythology isn't actually like kid appropriate, so things change. And I was like, and even the stuff in Percy Jackson, like some of that's changed, and so we talk about that.
So we have a couple of comments here. First, I want to shout out to our producer who came up with this, and this is very true. I know him very well. That is exactly him. His attention span is all over the place all the time, and it's great because it allows him to explore a bunch of things. So, yeah. But this is a really good question from Daniel. I'd love to know if there are any underrepresented genres of comics that you wish would be more prevalent.
I mean, I don't know, because again, I think a lot of, I guess maybe I wish that more people like knew there was as much variety in comics as there are. And then I always think that, any kind of representation, like if you are coming in and you're a comic creator and you are making the things that you want to see, the stories that you want to read or that you want to have told, I think that's going to create the best stuff. Like, I think the more creators that we have out there who come from different backgrounds and or like different things, then we get the wealth of the variety that we have. So I'm always just a fan of like, yes, more and more and more. If there's some genre that you love, like make it because other people will love it too. But I think a lot more does already exist. So maybe I just want people to be able to find it, know that it's there for them.
Yeah. Casey, you?
You know, one of the reasons why I've been working on a video game, which comes back from my comic idea, is we don't have a lot of like really, really solid, normal black characters in comics. Like we have like superheroes and stuff like that, and there's like, you know, a lot of power fantasy type stuff that happens. But when it comes just down to like, you know, black kid in a neighborhood navigating through like, you know, what it's like to be the one black kid in the school, or what it's like to like have the culture clash of immigrant parents and dealing with a society around you and stuff like that. I've seen it well done in a few instances, but it's not something where you have something that's really like more mainstream, if you will, of like how to do that in a way that's accessible and that people can resonate with and feel seen. And so like I think there's a lot of just how do you find the moments, those moments of wonder in normalcy. And DeAndre that's exactly it. But I think there's a lot of, we're steering away from the entire, like we need to think about what is the supernatural, and getting to a place where it's like, hey, how do we just talk about our lives and find out what are those moments that we can just marvel in our regular everyday existences. And if we can take that and put it into a way that's engaging in story formats, that's what I'd love to see more of.
I think that's great. And I think that's what the kids nowadays are really into. Like that's what they're craving. That's what they're reading. It really is. Like that is what they need more of, want more of.
Yeah, I feel like in a general sense, like for me, it's more books because I read lots of books. But like I really have made a real effort in the past couple of years to kind of diversify my bookshelf to try to get different points of view that I don't. Because there's plenty of white male authors. I've read a ton of them. Some of them are quite good, but like I'm not getting the voices of other folks and their experiences and how they write and how they see things. And that's, you know, I don't think you can stop learning that stuff, because if you do, then you're stale, and then we get sort of situations like we're in right now, but on a giant context to zoom out. But yeah, I like not knowing comics well. I think that, like you said, Amanda, just the more the better. Bring in as many different voices. Bring in, you know, queer voices. You know, BIPOC, AAPI. Like bring them all in. Let's have them all. Like one of my favorite books I got this year was something called Never Whistle in the Dark, and it was an anthology of indigenous fiction writers writing horror.
Oh, cool.
And that was really super interesting and cool, because that's, you know, like if you know the stories of like being in the woods, and if you heard something, no, you didn't. And like there's a lore to all that, and they explore that in so many different ways. It's really super fascinating book for me. And it was short stories, so everything's pretty quick. But yeah. Cool. So that was my little steering into the book world. So sorry about that.
No, the book world, it's all storytelling. It's all related for sure.
Yeah. So there's another question here, which I think we've touched on a bit, but are there any upcoming projects you're particularly excited about that you can share with us? And you did a bit, but is there anything that you're particularly excited about?
I mean, definitely the Death Mask Volume 2. I'm really excited about that one. I think it's a great book and has some really interesting themes. It's scary, but it's also really like interesting and cool. And Kat did a beautiful job on the art. And I also I'm working on something this year for Disney that I can't talk about yet, but like I previously had done Darkwing Duck. I'm working on something else for another beloved property, and that's about as much as I'm allowed to say right now, which is really, really exciting there. I hope you like
those
it.
pesky NDAs.
But it'll be fun.
Well, we'll be looking forward to hearing what that is, so we can, snag that up too. So, Here's another one. This one I didn't even think of, but our producer came up with this. Are there any upcoming? Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, my bad. Wonder Woman. This one. What are your takes on the modern Wonder Woman movies?
So the first one particularly I thought was absolutely fantastic. I was so excited for it, and then it really lived up to all the excitement that I had for it and how long that was in coming. So I was super stoked on it. I didn't like the second one as much as the first one, but I still had fun with it. So, I think, and again, I think it's great. As many fun, cool superhero movies as we can have, I'm always all for it. I think it's always a good time, and I particularly, like it when we get to have like a female-fronted superhero movie. And I was glad that the first Wonder Woman did as well as it did in the box office, and I think it deserved to.
This Daniel made this comment. I'm not quite sure what he said. I only see these little story vignettes of unknown historical figures on social media that should be adapted in some way. Oh, this is when we were doing Black History Month, and we were talking about different like real people who had things that happened, and we just know nothing about. And having some adaptation to learn more about that would be really great. So I think that's what he's referring to. So.
Yeah, and it's a way to, again, not that comics are only for kids, because they're not, they're for adults too, but like that is certainly a way to make history very palatable to kids. If you want them to learn about a cool character in history, it's a good way to do it.
For sure. Yeah, we do like it when you can't say anything more.
I know, I'm sorry, it's the worst. NDAs are the worst, but I like to stay employed.
I would like to push back on this gently. I am not a hater of it. I think the first one was pretty decent. I'm not a big fan of Gal Gadot as an actress.
Well, that's fine. You know what? Everybody's allowed to have. You don't have to like something just because I like it. That's okay. Again, there's stuff.
Well, on that note, no, I'm kidding.
Now we're gonna fight.
Yeah. Oh, it could be better. I think the second one I really didn't think was very good, but that's, again, this is everything subjective, right? Like, wasn't my jam, so that's all.
Which is fine.
There's one other thing I had that I wanted to ask in relation of, you said that you're friends with a librarian and a lot of kids check out these comics and all this stuff. What about manga? Is that
very
for you?
Super popular. It tends to be like, from my experience, like the middle and high school is like when it's really big for the kids. But yeah, but also elementary school. Yeah, they're very into manga. They're very into comics, everything. Casey has a thought.
Don't start me on manga. So as we were talking about the comic book movie adaptations, my kid came in, my elder one is like, One Piece, all of it. And I'm like, I know. We're talking about comics.
No.
I was sticking over with the, more traditional American side of things and non-Japanese, non-East Asian. But yes, manga is a massive part of my compendium as well. My kids, so for context, One Piece, most popular manga and anime probably in the history of Japan, currently at about 1,100 episodes in anime and almost 1,200 chapters of manga. And to contextualize that, my kids are like in the 800, 900 episodes of the anime, and it's a wild ride. I love it. People don't get into it because it's so long, but it's so worth it. And yeah, there's a lot of things I've watched, and I'm very annoying to my eldest because all of his friends are like, your dad's so cool. He's watched all this stuff and we can talk to him about stuff. And he's like, he's not cool. He doesn't get any of you in trouble. All right. Like, no, my dad is lame. Stop it. But it's just like, yeah, I see it now. Like back when I first got into it, it was still very super niche in North America. Like I used to get my anime burned on a DVD, someone downloaded from a torrent, brought to a Comic-Con in the early 2000s so I can go watch at home on my computer and binge it. And now it's like everywhere, right? And so yeah, manga is spreading like wildfire. I don't know what the future of comics and manga looks like, but the line is getting more and more blurred by the day. And I'm just like, I think there's got to be just a point where we just have one global phenomenon that is called visual media versus like it being so regional, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a way to combine the word manga and comic with something because my family has this weird thing where we try to combine words to make them one to make them sound like
Spoonerisms. Good old spoonerisms. Yeah, there's nothing that I've seen yet. Like Kamanga just doesn't really come off the tongue that well. Kamanga books. But yeah, no, I think it's funny because just as the entire industry, the entire medium of comics, and how there is something for pretty much everyone in some form, they've done a lot of that with manga as well. It's just that there's like so much of it is Japanese culture focused that you have to do a bit of translation, if you will, mental translation to understand what the references are at some points. But it's definitely getting to a point where it's so much more widespread that gap is shrinking more and more.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So yeah, I'm just well, Amanda, since your daughter is in like elementary school, I didn't know if it was going to be as popular in an elementary.
Well, I
format.
mean, yeah, look, when some of my Girl Scouts are all the same age as my daughter, and there are several of them who are One Piece obsessed. Like I go to birthday parties and I'm buying all the One Piece stuff to go take them for their, like that's what they're into. So it is there. I just think when they're a little bit older, I've just noticed at like the middle school and the high school age seems to be like when they get like deep dive into it. But yeah, it's definitely like in my sample group of like fourth grade girls that I know, like there are definitely some hardcore One Piece fans.
Yeah, I just find that interesting at that age. Like, there's very few anime things. Like, I never got into manga. A couple of my kids are really into. A couple of kids are really into anime. The only one I really liked was Studio Ghibli, and I'm going to explain why. I don't care for the animation anime. It's too like stark. And the other part is because I am partially deaf, I read lips. So when something is like not matching up, where Studio Ghibli does English stuff where it's not translated, it's actually done with English in mind. So I'm a little biased because it's easier for me to decipher and hear. So even with some, I use subtitles and I still read lips when I'm watching stuff. So go figure that out. I think I'm just practiced at it and I can't stop my brain from doing it. So, but yeah, the anime thing is like kind of nuts. Like it has really boomed. And I mean, there were kids when I was in high school who liked some of that, but they were not considered normal. And unfortunately, that was men of a certain age or people of a certain age, they would get mocked for it, and that sucks. So yeah, it
was the same thing with comics though. Back in the day, if you were a comic reader, you were part of a niche culture. The people who got their lunch money stolen and the people who were not part of the cool club. That's the way it used to be. And then I think I would argue that the Marvel Cinematic Universe was a big proponent in popularizing it so that it could be way more accepted across the board.
Yep.
For sure. So Money's like, yep, we were the weird kids.
And now it's so mainstream.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. It was one of I was kind of a middle of the road kid in high school. I kind of got along with a lot of people, but I wasn't like super popular, but I wasn't unpopular. But one of the things that, now understand, this is the 80s and rap was just starting to come out. And I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. And Amanda, I know you grew up in rural South. So you understand there's a certain kind of, it was all hair bands and country music. And I was one of like 3 kids in my entire school to listen to rap. And I got mocked and called all kinds of things that are, I would repeat. But that is my only relation to that. Like trying to think back, like I was not like, I wasn't essentially the weird kid. They just assumed I was culturally appropriating things, I guess. So, so that was my own trying to relate to that bit. But So we do have another question here for you, Amanda. So this is an interesting one. What legacy do you hope your work in comics leaves behind? That's a good
That's just
question.
a nice, light little question.
Just a little seasoning on that one.
It's a great question. I don't know if I have a concise answer. I'm hoping that it brings some some joy to people's lives. I hope that the things that I write bring joy, maybe sometimes help people feel less alone or have things that they relate to. Some things I feel like have good messages about life and people, and some things I think are just fun. And that's what I'm hoping, right? I'm hoping that I bring some perspective, some thoughts about life that either make people feel seen or look at something in a new way, and some joy. And that's really the hope. It's not like one big thing that I hope people take away, but I hope that people's lives are better for having read some of my stuff.
Is there an
think that's
eventual
right.
personal project in the works?
Mm. Yeah, there are a couple of things that I would love to do that are kind of like more for me, I guess. The hard thing with that, and this is a wonderful problem to have. The hard thing is that the things that I do, which I also love and truly believe in, that pay the bills, take priority, and I've got these deadlines, for things that I write, and so I back burner my personal projects and work on them when I can so they don't get priority. And again, wonderful problem to have. And I love the things that I'm working on. And I love that I get to write for a living and pay my bills with it. So not a complaint. But yeah, I hope someday I get to get some of my passion projects done too.
That would be lovely.
Hmm.
And we'll be here for it, of course. But
Thank you.
this is one goofy comment. This is I got mocked in West Philly for liking rock music. The music scene went hard today. It is. Greg, he's the same age as I am, so like we both knew all that stuff. So yeah, I just find it interesting that he, as a black man, liked rock music, and they mocked him for it, and I was a white guy liked rap music.
The thing is that kids will find a reason to make fun of you. They will find whatever it is. I mean, people will say that sort of like, oh, I got to be careful because if your kid has a name that can easily be nicknamed, like, even if they don't, they're going to get a shitty nickname. Like, don't worry about
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
If
it's
the kids
gonna
want to be
happen.
mean, they will figure it out.
They're really, really creative with how to be mean too. Like they find
Mm-hmm.
really interesting ways. Like there's a dumb skit that John Mulaney does where he talks about that middle schoolers are the 13-year-olds are like the meanest people on the earth, and they'll say something about you, but like gets to the core of your biggest insecurity. For some reason, that's the age that they get it. So, all right. So another question. This time for Casey.
Ooh. Okay. Will Casey pursue his video game, or will it stay in the vault? Dondre, that's an excellent question. So I'm going to contextualize this of where I am in life right now. So the reason why I stay in the shadows so much when it comes down to the online world is because I am a bureaucrat who runs a team of more than 150 people for work. I have 2 kids I'm raising, and that keeps me pretty busy throughout the day. That said, I am also very, very stubborn about finding time for creativity and making things work because I don't want to see things die on the vine. So if I feel like there's a medium I want to pursue for something, I'll keep at it. In kind of a cute turn of events, my sons and I are all kind of learning 3D modeling at the same time on Blender. And so I've got them courses and computers and everything set up so they want to basically design games for Roblox. So they're learning how to create their stuff on that. Mine is a little more complex. And when Amanda was talking about writing for DC, my storyline is basically I want to write a game that has, let's say, multiple main characters, but I want you to get a full game experience playing any of those characters. I don't want it to be like there's one main character and a bunch of sides. It's like a city where everyone has a story. And obviously you're not going to get like a million stories in a game because your mind would melt. Your brain would melt out of you. It would not be good. But if I can get like a core set of like 30 to 50 characters and they all have different ways in which your stories interact, that's ultimately what I'm trying to do in the game format I'm going for. I can see it in my head and I'm starting to get some of the visuals put together. done a lot of study about the entire business of things. Like I've could have an entire session on the indie gaming world and how my love for Steam has blossomed again in the last bit, when, you know, it used to be the big three between Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo. Used to just be like, oh, this is obviously how games work. We pay 80, $90 for a game, and this is what we get. This is how we do things. And then I start learning about, like, you can pay $10 for a game that has massive amounts of replayability, and it's more about the experience you can build for somebody. And video games is really one of those rare mediums where you can really shape an entire world around things. So it's one of those things that's never going to leave my brain. It's going to bother me forever if I don't do it. So it might take me a long time to get it done, because video games are not light undertakings, but it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to at least get a working model of how the mechanics work, so I could take it out to actual showcases, show other people, see if I have other people who want to glom onto it and make it a bigger thing.
All for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's ambitious, and I'm glad you're doing it for real. So
Thank you.
any other things we want to talk about, like with comic book related, or talk about anything, like before we close it off for the evening?
Greg's not dropped me another question. I thought this was the Amanda show. What's going on here, guys?
No, this is a great question. I was about to say, wait, there's a really good question.
I missed it. Sorry.
Oh no, it just popped up. Okay, so this is an interesting thing, because for context, I've been creating pretty regularly until I stopped. I was creating pretty regularly from about 2010 to 2021 as a dad creator, and this is where I got to meet, Doug and Greg, and make all these lovely connections. It's amazing. And then I kind of stepped away because I got into management and had to kind of rebalance life. But what I'm finding, and Amanda, this really goes back to what you're saying about the types of books that kids are taking out from the library. It's be authentic, but like not in the way that people are just tell the truth. It's like, no, you need to know who you are and what it is that you individually have to share with the world that no one else has. And once you can figure that out, it will color the stories you tell in ways you can't even imagine. So even now I'm working on a bunch of YouTube scripts and things like that as well, from the stance of, a married 40-something dad of two with a full-time job and the choices I have to make now in life, but also do it in a way that you can tell those individual stories where someone who isn't in that walk of life can appreciate what you're going through, but someone who is in that walk of life can feel seen. Once you can do that, it's going to be so much more amazing. You'll get everything you're hoping to get from the world of content creation. Those doors will open up to you, because people will know who you as an individual are. Do not follow the trends. Do not try to chase after whatever on an everyday basis, because that is what leads to burnout. Nobody wants that. Figure out what makes you stand out, and no one can take it away from you. Once you can figure that out, you have a foolproof, everlasting method to make sure that you can get out there and continue to tell your story every day, because you will always be you. So, yeah.
I love that. And I can actually, how I got started in comics was doing some content creation stuff online. I was doing little weekly web comics, like about my own life, slice of life, that my wife was illustrating. She was my girlfriend at the time, but that she was illustrating. It was like embarrassing stories about myself. And then the other thing, I was doing YouTube videos, and I was orphaned when I was young. I made a YouTube video that on Father's Day, that was like a funny video about being an orphan on Father's Day, where I'm talking about coping with it the whole time, but slowly throughout the video, I'm morphing into Batman without ever commenting on it. And so I'm just like slowly turning into Batman through the video, and kind of a joke about, Batman being an orphan and me being an orphan and whatever. And it ended up going around the DC offices, and they thought it was really funny. And that's how an editor reached out to me. She was like, hey, I've seen your webcomics, and I saw this Batman video. But again, being authentic to myself, right? It was about my journey as a person who coped with a lot of loss young through dark humor in a nerdy way. Like, it was like very authentic to me, not a joke just anyone could make. And because of that, then it was like, hey, she was like, would you like to write a Wonder Woman story? And I was like, Oh, sure.
That's wow.
Start there.
Twist my arm.
You're exactly right. It's being authentic. It's doing your own stuff. It's not trying to fit into what, like, I
Mhm.
didn't do that with a goal. I certainly didn't do that with a goal of getting
Mhm.
to write a Wonder Woman story. That was not on the bingo card, but it was just about me being like, this is funny. This is what I'm coping with. Like, this is how I cope. And then, it resonates with people when you're being authentic.
Oh, sure.
Wow.
That's a pretty fascinating story.
It's
I
so
didn't
weird.
know.
I love it when people are like, how'd you break into comics? And I'm like, well, not in the way you're going to.
Yeah.
Like, don't try this at home, kids.
Oh
Now,
man.
now I'm gonna have to go look for this video.
I think I've taken it down since then. That was a long time ago, you guys.
Oh,
Yeah,
I get
that's
that.
true.
I
That is
get
an
that.
amazing story. So, yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll have another question pop in here before I start trying to shut things down. But I really want to thank you both for being here. This is a kind of a fledgling thing for me that I've just really loved doing. And I appreciate you both taking time out of your busy schedules to kind of pop on here with me, share your thoughts, ideas about comics, a world I know a little more about now. Thanks to you both. But is there anything else you guys want to talk about before we call it an evening?
No, I look forward. Anytime you guys need me, just track me down. I know I'm hard to find in these digital streets, but I'm always happy
Yes, you
to
are.
chat with y'all. Great guests, and this feels like a full circle moment because it's always hard to get back to the Brothers and Booze roots and everything we've always had going on. You guys are doing a great job as always. I always try to check in when I can, and Amanda, it's been an honor. So thank you all.
It's been lovely to meet you, and thank you. Always, same. I'm always happy to come hang out.
Yeah. So, all right, folks, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you next month. I am still lining up guests, so I don't exactly have the list of who it is. I have one person confirmed. I have another yet to confirm. So we'll see how that shakes out. That is on August 12th. So that's the next show. So thanks again, Amanda and Casey. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.